Platform classmates. Learn Power Platform like you would learn from a fellow classmate.
Really have a same experience working with the Power Platform about eight months to a year maybe. So I've been experimenting things, referring people's blogs, and the challenges I face. One such challenge I'm going to present in our today's session. So I'll be presenting my screen. I'll just turn off my camera because of some network issues. So I'll present my screen. So can you guys see my screen?
It's coming up.
Yeah.
Yes, we can. Thanks, Vidit.
Yeah.
Over to you.
So yeah, my today's session is about creating Word documents, D365 Word documents and email attachment automation using Power Automate. So this is one thing which I've been trying to do, attaching documents, playing around with Word templates, and here I'm putting an experiment of mine which I had tried. I'd referred a few blogs as well. So our today's learning objectives. Upon completing this session, the participants, I guarantee the participants will be able to create and populate Word templates using Power Automate, generate SharePoint folders, which is a very commonly asked question, or which is a very commonly asked query on our uh, platforms on our Power user platforms. So triggering Power Automate flows using a ribbon button. Other than our normal, we'll be using our normal connectors, but with some customizations in on our forms, we can do this. And the topic of highlight, creating a draft email with attached document using Power Automate. The same goes with the agenda for today. So the first point will be introduction to the use case. The other points I've covered in the learning objectives. So I'll jump off to introduction to the use case. So I have divided here the use case into two parts: generating a Word document on click of a button and storing it into SharePoint, and creating a draft email with this generated Word document on click of a button. So these particularly will be two Power Automate flows, which will trigger each on click of two different buttons on a Dynamics form. So here is how the process flow will be for these two flows. So for generating a Word document, we'll learn how to create a Word document, how to generate a Word template from Power Automate, other than our usual document template XML mapping, which we do within CRM. Creating a folder in SharePoint using Power Automate, which will handle how to handle the folder structure, um, how the SharePoint generates folder structure for entities and stuff like that, and saving our the Word document which we will be generating into SharePoint. Later, we will see how to get this generated file into SharePoint, a specific generated file into SharePoint, and create an email record, and then attach it to the email record document. So let's begin with the very first topic: create and populate Word template using Power Automate. So to begin working with Word documents, the very first thing which we need to do is to enable the developer tab on Word. So I'll just quickly go on to my Word screen to show you how it is done. Here I have already enabled the Word document, but you can just do it by going into Files tab, clicking on the options. Um, in the Files tab, a Word option a screen will pop up for you. In this Word option screen, in the sitemap, there is customize ribbon button, and in this customize ribbon button, you can see a option called a developer. So once you check this option, you will get a developer tab, which I'm getting. as you can see in my screen. So in this developer tab, there are many controls, content controls. You can add picture content controls or repeating control. We'll be seeing a few of them later on in our presentation. So I'll just move back to my slide. So that's how you enable a developer tab into the Word document. So I spoke about the controls which were available, which are available in the developer tab. So there are content controls, picture controls, drop down controls, and many more. So from these controls, currently we will be using a content control and a repeating control for our example later on. So to begin with, let's consider an example. Say you have an invoice entity, you want to create an invoice report. I know there is a OBB out of the box report present for invoice, but say that doesn't satisfy your needs and you need to add a few more fields, a few more customizations to those reports, and you intend to generate a document out of it. So let's say in this case, I need to add the customer to whom the invoice will be sent to, the address of the customer, the delivery date, the due date, payment terms of the invoices, the owner to which the invoice is assigned to, and the opportunity which is related to the invoice. So here I have created a Word template. As we saw in our plus process flow, the very first step is to create a Word template. So here I have added content controls for each of my fields, which I need to enter in this Word template. I'll quickly go on to the Word template to show you how the content control looks like. So here is my document. I'll just click on the design mode. So for customers, I have a title and a label named customer name, and so on for other fields. So uh, entering this title and tag is very important, as this title and tag will be visible in your Word document connector in the Power Automate flow, which I'll be showing in a while. So let's move back to our slide. So as you can see, we have added the label to customer name. So yeah, so when this document has been generated, we need to store this document into a SharePoint library. In my case, I have stored it into invoice SharePoint library in a folder called templates. And as I said, the labels which we had entered over our documents, the content control labels are now visible uh, in our Word template connector. So you can, as you can see, customer name, terms, due dates, tax, discounts, dates, addresses, salesperson, opportunities. All of these labels I have entered into my Word document. So here you can see date, due date, terms, and the label names are exactly the same what I have entered here. So let's move on. So to to generate a Word document using a flow, we need to get that Word document from our SharePoint library which we have entered. So I'm just using a connector get files, SharePoint files, and I'm getting that file and I'm populating uh, the contents which I'm getting in the Word document using our Dataverse connectors. So let's move on to the next slide. So all the text fields, all mapping single fields or which won't recur is very easy. But mapping related fields, say product lines in this case for invoice becomes a bit tricky, for which we use a repeating control. So I'll just show how we can do that. So in here on this slide, as you can see, there is an invoice which has four product lines, and these product lines are dynamically added into our Word document template using repeating control. So as you can see, I have created a table. Uh, I have created a table in the Word template, and each row, uh, each column has been assigned a label, and that label name is similar to what we have in our connector. So in our Power Automate flow, we'll be creating an array of these lists, um, as it will be a list of items. As we saw, there were four items. There were four items, product lines. Hence, it will be a list of items. Hence, we'll be creating an um, um, array for these products, and later on we'll just select the entire row and give it a repeating control. I'll just show you how it is done. So we are moving back to our Word document. So as you can see, for products, I have given a label product. For quantity, I've given a label quantity. For unit, I've given a content control label, a content control quantity, and for total, I've given a label total. So once we are done labeling all the rows, all the columns, we just need to select these columns, the row which we want to auto populate, and then just add a repeating control. So that's how it is done, and it will dynamically populate the lines, for any line if we add more in future. So um, yeah. So one more thing about this repeating control: once you add a repeating control on the connector, on the populate Word document connector on our Power Automate, you will get an option to add these array elements individually. But since we are collectively adding these array elements, we'll need to select the highlighted option to input an entire array, as shown on the image in the right side, and we'll just paste the array which we generated earlier. So very important part here while working with SharePoint is SharePoint has a specific file structure for every entity once you integrate those entities with SharePoint. So I'll just show you that file structure once. Let me log into my SharePoint site. So as you can see, once you integrate any entity with a SharePoint, uh, all the folders for all the document libraries for the entities which are integrated into SharePoint will be visible. So as you can see, I've integrated an invoice entity. Invoice document library has been generated. As I mentioned earlier, I have created a folder called templates, in which we have our document template, invoice document template, which we are using in our Power Automate flow to generate the invoice report. And these are my invoice records, the folders, invoice record folders, and this is the structure for those folders. So for this specific folder, the invoice name is D365 implementation and support underscore to uppercase the GUID of that record. If you see, so the name of that invoice is D365 support, and the GUID of that invoice in uppercase, as I showed. When you go to related documents, you can see that folder. The document location has been generated. Hence, moving back to our slide again. Hence, we need to generate uh, a folder structure in order uh, so that SharePoint knows that this folder structure belongs to, or this document location belongs to this specific record. Also, one thing which while testing, while I was implementing, I realized that while working with names, it is not really into our hand to know that what the user will enter. Say for the invoice record which we just saw, the name was D365 implementation and something something. So the user can just enter ampersand instead of and it would catch as a special character. So here is a catch. How SharePoint deals with special characters it is for a certain set of special characters, it replaces those special characters with a dash. So here is what I am doing. I am making the name of my invoice compatible to the structure which SharePoint gives, and I'm replacing any special character if it has been caught with a dash. So let's move ahead. So here is how we generate the Word document. As we saw that we have concatenated or we have generated the folder structure for that specific invoice. In the earlier slide, we just pass that folder structure here to the create new folder invoice report, create a file connector of our flow. We generate a document template and we create a new invoice report file. To this connector, I have passed the path of the file which we have created here, and I am passing the name of the I am passing the name which I want the document to have with the extension. This extension is very much important. If you don't pass the extension, it will just take a long string or just say a base64 string of that specific document, and I'm passing the document which we have generated earlier in our flow steps. So that's how it is. So here is how it goes. How we can trigger a flow using a button. So it is very simple. We have registered a flow. We have set a flag, an option set field, say generate report. So the flow triggers when the field is set to yes, and at the end of the flow, it again sets back to no. So what I've written a small JavaScript command on the generate report button, which triggers the field to the generate report flag field to yes, and hence it triggers the flow. So here is how it goes. We are just running the flow on update of a specific field, but we are updating that field using um, uh, JavaScript. So let's see how this works in person. So I'll just walk you through the process how it goes. So here I have an invoice for which I need to generate a invoice report. So I have a button on click of which this field will trigger back to yes. Uh, just give me a minute. Yeah, will trigger back to yes, and which will in turn trigger our flow. So just let's just go through our flow. So as you can see, I have written a flow on when an invoice is modified, and the condition to this flow is when the generate report flag is set to true. So later on in the flow steps, we are getting the invoice data, we are getting the customer data as we are using this data in our Word template below. So as I mentioned that there might be many related lines to many related product lines to an invoice, as we can see that here there are one, two, three, four invoice product lines for this specific invoice. So I'm just getting those invoice lines using a fetch XML, passing the invoice ID to it, which will in turn give me all those product lines. Here I am initializing an array which we will be going to pass to our repetitive control, as I showed in the presentation. So as you can see, for every value which is coming from the fetch XML query, I am appending an array to the initialized array which we have initialized in the flow step. So later on, this is as as you can see that I am also passing payment terms. Now payment terms are is a option set, and as we know that option set have two types of values: a label value and the actual numerical value which it stores. If I could show you, um, I'll just go to voices, option sets. So as you can see, the payment terms, uh, yeah. So as you can see, the payment terms have a value 1 for net 30, 2 for net for 2%, 10, net 45. So what we need to do is we need to maintain these values in our flow as well, because by our Dataverse connector, it will just pass us the value instead of the label. Hence, we need to maintain the label next to every value, and using this JSON, we can just map the values to each and every label. So I'll talk about these variables later on. So here, as you can see, I have just replaced the special characters from the invoice name, and here I'm concatenating the invoice name with the invoice GUID, replacing the dash in that invoice GUID to make it compatible, to make it look something like this. Uh, the name underscored uppercase to the GUID. So after that, I'm just checking for a condition. What I'm doing here, since we are generating a folder first, and and putting our document into that folder, so I'm just setting a flag so that once when a user generates the folder, this flag is set to yes, and later on if he needs to generate or if he needs to update the generated document, there won't be multiple folders created. So for the very first click, for when the user will create the invoice report for the very first time, it will just the flag will be just set to false, and a new folder will be created in such case. Uh, Once the new folder is created, as we have stored our invoice report into a library, we are just getting that document template which we will be using to generate this invoice report. So as you can see, I've used the connector, um, populating a Word document population, and the label names which we had given to the label names which we had given for customer name, for terms, for due dates, for invoice IDs, for taxes, for documents, are visible here, and we can just pass values to these content controls from our Dataverse connectors. Once this document has been generated, I am just creating a file, an invoice report Word file uh, into the folder which we created in the earlier steps in our SharePoint location. So I'm just passing the folder path of that created file, and I'm just updating the um, folder generated flag to yes, as for the next time we won't need to generate a new folder. We'll just need to update the document which is already been generated in the folder. So what I'm doing here is I'm storing the ID of the of the invoice file which we have created, and I'm storing the path of the file of the invoice file which we have created. I'll be talking about this. This is required for getting the file when we will be generating an email, as we don't know what file it is for that invoice. So just to filter uh, just to have a firm filter for getting the file, I have stored the ID of the document which we are generating before sending it to an email. And later on, I'm just updating these values into a field which I've created on our form. These are developer fields. These will generally be hidden for present for the demo purpose. I've kept them visible. So as you can see, I have stored the SharePoint URL here in a text-based URL field, and the folder path of the document generated. This folder path I'm using in my JavaScript just to open the document, and this SharePoint URL, I'll be talking more on this when we move on to generating the email. So yes, that's what it is. In the no section, for example, if the user has already generated an invoice document, and later on if he needs to modify or if he needs to generate a new document, we have just updated the invoice report document, and we are here, see here, we are getting the file which the user has previously generated, and the file identifier, the ID which we stored here while generating the file, we are passing it for getting the file. This becomes very much handy, and is less prone to give errors while getting any file from SharePoint, or specific file from SharePoint. And we are just updating that file back into the folder which we generated. And again, we are storing the uh, document ID for that file and the path for that file. So let's see how actually this works. So as you can see, I have already created my first invoice. So hence it created a invoice report folder, and a document inside this report. So now when I'll click on the generate report button, uh, it will just update the previous document which I have generated. This is just a JavaScript promise which I've written uh, for visual enhancements. So it might take 10 to 15 minutes. So we'll just wait for a while for it to complete. So see, as the document has been generated, it is giving us a pop-up that invoice document is ready, and we can just open that invoice document. If I just click over here, it will just download the invoice document. If we open this document, you can see all the fields which we had entered are flowing over to here. Our customer was Cloudfronts Private Limited, the address of that customer, the invoice ID which we passed through the flow to our content control, the date, the due date, the terms. See here we can see the label of the option set instead of the values, the salesperson, and here is the repeating control for the product lines which the product line array which we passed the amount and the total amount. So that's how that's easy, and that's how easily and simply we can just generate a Word document on click of a button. So let's move now that we are done generating the document. Let's move on to see how we can get this Word document, uh, and create a draft email in D365. So as we saw that while generating the file itself, we were storing the ID of that file in a field. Hence, while generating the email template, it becomes very easy for us to get the file, as we already know which ID is pointing towards that file. So this is a very uh, efficient way to what we can say point out to a specific file location into a SharePoint, just by pointing out to its unique ID. So as you can see, I have just passed the file location, and from the SharePoint site I am just getting the file which we just generated. uh, uh, to uh, to create an attachment, we can't just pass the file contents directly onto the attachments entity. We need to pass a base64 string of that base64 of that file. Hence, we are converting it into a base64 in the later steps. So we are setting the two party. Here we are creating an email record from the email table in CRM, and we are setting the two party of the email and the from party of the email. These are emails which the system knows. For example, here I have entered the accounts and the user to whom the email record will be assigned to. There can be cases where you just need to enter a random email address, which the system doesn't know. Those emails are not identical to the systems. Uh, those emails are called as non-responsive emails, and we can enter those emails using the participation type mask. I'll show you later on when I go through the flow how to enter such emails. For now, we are just entering the values from CRM for to the to party and the from party. And now here is the catch. So while generating the attachment, you can see that there are two types of attachment entities. One is the attachments and one is activity mime type attachment. For uh, people who have been working in Dynamics before the Power Platform, you might be knowing that while we generate an attachment using a plugin or say a custom code, we use this activity mime type to set the attachment values. But for now, for using it through the flow, we will be using the attachments. The attachment entity has the attachment ID as a required field. Hence, it becomes difficult to surpass it, because we are just creating a record and it is demanding for an ID before we create a record. Hence, we need to fool the system, and we need to pass a null GUID to the required field. So what this does is it generates the system generates the GUID when we pass a null GUID. So here is how um we create the email attachment. And this email attachment will belong to the email entity. This email entity type will be a custom value, since the drop down only gives two values: email activity and something else. So this email is the logic name of our email message table in CRM. we are passing the base64 string body, which we just which we have encoded the our file contents into. We are passing the file name and the MIME type. Now this MIME type is very important since I am attaching this Word document, this document as a Word document. Hence, I'm passing the Word document MIME type over to this. If you want to attach a PDF, say a PDF of that document or anything else, you can just pass the MIME type for PDFs and so. So let's just jump off to our flow to see how it works. So here it is. Again, this flow triggers on click of a button, email report button, which triggers a flag send email, which in turn triggers the flow. So as you can see, it is on modified invoice when the send email flag is updated and the trigger conditions are send email is set to true. Later on, similarly, we are just replacing the invoice names. Actually, this is an extra step. We need not do this because we already have stored the file, the location, the ID of the file which we want to retrieve. Hence, when we do a get file content, we just pass the SharePoint libraries address and the file identifier, the ID which we stored while generating our Word document. Hence, it becomes very much handy and very much efficient to get the correct file for that specific record. As I said, we need to pass a null GUID to our activity type entity since the activity type entity has its primary ID required. Hence, I have just composed a null here. I am generating a SharePoint, a base64 string, a base64 of the file contents which I am getting here. And here I am creating a draft email. So as I said that these were the emails which our system knows. So say suppose I just need to enter an email no reply at the rate viditgholam.com, which is not into our CRM system. Hence, it is a not resolved email. In such cases, if you click here, switch to input entire array, you can see the participation masks and the values given to the recipient and the from values given to these participation masks. So in such cases, you just need to enter an element to this array and pass the participation masks and set the participation mask. Say you just need to set the non uh, the email which is not known to CRM as the CC for this email. So you will just pass the participation mask to and and just just assign any value, say address used, and assign that email. So that's how you generally work with on not identical emails. So so after we have generated this, after we have created this a draft email, here is how we create the attachment. So as you can see, I can show you attachments. See, so we have two entities here. The first one is attachments and the second one is attachments. So the first entity is our activity MIME attachments and the second entity is attachment. So we'll be using the second entity here. So it uh, where is that step? Yeah. Oh, I just reload it.
Vidit will have 5 minutes before
Yeah, yeah,
beginning
yeah,
the
yeah,
next.
yeah, 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 yeah. We'll be done. So yeah. So as you can see that we have um, we are passing a null GUID to the attachments. The number of attachment is 1. Here the entity, we need to pass a custom value to this, since we don't have anything pointing towards the logic name of our email messages. Hence we just pass the custom value. We pass the regarding to which this attachment will be set to, which is an email. We pass the contents. We pass the base 64 of the file contents which we got from SharePoint, which will in turn be our attachment. We pass the file name which we want our file to have, and the MIME type. So I'll just trigger this flow. Again, it is on click of a button. I'll just see if, yeah. So when we click this button, again, this is a JavaScript promise, which gives it, it will take 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds to generate the record. Yeah. So once the record has been generated, it gives a pop-up to create the record, and we can just open the record and we can see that the email record has been created in CRM. So see, from what I had passed to the to party, from party, the subject, our body, email body regarding, and the attachment which we passed to, we can just download it. Yeah. So if we open this, our invoice report is in the attachment. Later on, we can just click send and just send it to the client. So here is the email record. That's all I had for today. If you guys have any questions, I can just answer it, or you can just contact me on my email, or ping me on LinkedIn. Any questions? Or
We do have actually a lot of questions. We tried to answer some of them. Let's try to scroll up. If not, we'll be beginning with the game shortly. It's a quick quiz.
Power Platform classmates. Learn Power Platform like you would learn from a fellow classmate.